Today, I'm talking with Johann König, who opened his first gallery in Berlin in 2002, and since then had a pretty impressive run with opening also another space in London and also in Tokyo in the MCM house in Ginza. We have some more interesting projects coming up together. What I thought was really interesting during the lockdown, how Johann took the opportunity to also change the communication of a gallerist, first of all with his artists and also with the people that usually would visit his gallery. So with online webinars, with a fair that he has built within his great space at the St. Agnes Church in Berlin. So a very interesting person to have a conversation with.
So Dirk, I think the whole MCM collaboration started, I'm so bad with years. Is it 3-4 years ago?
Yeah, I think it's 4 years ago, really.
Already, right? Which was, I think, somehow a kick-off dinner we hosted here at the gallery, which I can actually quickly show you. So we have this spectacular space here, and the walls weren't there, and we had a very long dinner table with Sunju Kim here and a lot of visitors from Korea and Japan. I think that was when MCM announced to revisit their roots and origin in Germany and open a place here. And shortly after you joined as a chief designer, I think. And shortly after we did a travel-inspired capsule collection informed by the idea of commuting, and I think the idea was born in Germany and raised on the world. And there we did an amazing event at Art Basel Miami Beach when it was, I mean, that feels like a decade ago now, because it was a time where people could gather and we had this unbelievable brutalist house in Palm Beach, which is like a spiral. So yeah, and then I think actually I traveled to Seoul and met Sunju Kim over lunch, and originally was planning to open a space in Seoul. Met Sunju Kim, and she had the idea of her MCM Ginza Haus 1 space, which Dirk, you developed, of somehow a social space, at that time having the Olympics in mind, of somehow a hub where of course MCM retail is happening, but also a place of exchange, and where the idea was to invite Berlin artists, but also an amazing Berlin retailer, Andreas Mukudis. And then the idea was born to do a collaboration on like joining forces in, and I think that's very innovative, being in the same field, but being maybe a bit more urban and a bit more young, and also a bit more maybe game changing, MCM and König. Then we developed this idea of joining forces and also losing a little bit of control by being collaborative.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great opportunity for both. I mean, as every designer is so interested in art anyway, I thought that this was a great opportunity to connect closer and really hold hands there and create synergies as well. So especially in this space that we had in Ginza, which had this feeling of a temporary space, and and inviting people in. And we did this also with other designers during that time. But having you there and also having the opportunity to show German art in different shapes and forms and disciplines, I think was really amazing.
So the first opening we did was with Jürgen Teller, and which I think also was a perfect fit because, of course, he's a fashion icon and he changed fashion photography, but he's also an artist and an old friend of mine. I think it was really the perfect fit for the first opening because it built the bridge between fashion and art. And I find it also very interesting that you, Dirk, and I, we know each other for so long from Berlin, but that we then our first project we do in Japan, you know. So it's like, and I think that I think also fits so well to MCM because it's a German-born brand, and so I think that Jürgen was really the perfect fit because he comes from Bavaria and he's playing with these like German cliches, which he's somehow blowing up. And so that was a perfect opening show. And then we pretty much focused on artists living and working in Berlin, in Germany. And I mean, that was interesting because, of course, it's Japan is a very closed society, but somehow they have expressed interest in German products, German art, German culture. And of course, I mean, I think that the highlight would have been Norbert Bisky's exhibition and Alicia Quade, which were both planned to be for the Olympics, which then didn't happen.
Johann, when you came up with this idea of having Jürgen Teller first, I was super excited because, of course, I've been a big fan of Jürgen. And as you say, we know each other for so long. It was really funny to be there together in Tokyo, opening a gallery show. Everyone was a little bit like jet lagged and overworked, and but it was such an amazing energy that was there, and I was super excited to finally meet Jürgen Teller because I never did before, and to have this opportunity to have such a renowned photographic artist in our house was an amazing opportunity. And as you say, he's of course known a lot for his fashion photography, but he went beyond that as well. He's really a great photographer, artist, and not only limited on fashion photography. I was super excited. I still am. When I think back, I'm still hyped about it, and it was one of those great perfect matches, you know, like to have a German photographer in Tokyo with a German brand that is basically goes beyond just being a traditional German brand, but is has such a global embraces such global cultural aspects. I think it's amazing. So, and I also thought that the exhibitions of Norbert Bisky and also Alicia, who are very different, but to show really like a big spectrum of what kind of artists are living and working out of Berlin, which is such a multicultural influence, and it's great to show that kind of aspect of German culture in a city like Tokyo, because we are more than Lederhosen.
Yeah, I think that was very interesting. What kind of image we presented of Germany, especially with Jürgen's show, because it was opened by the German ambassador to Japan, and then we went to a German restaurant. And I mean, who would ever do that in Tokyo, going to German restaurants? Like, I mean, looking back, that was probably the worst idea of the whole project, because the food in Tokyo is so good, and then ending up at some sausage place just for curiosity. I think that fashion is, I mean, first of all, it's really both worlds inform each other heavily. Thinking of Christian Dior, he used to be an art dealer, turned fashion designer. But then also, if you think of Margiela, who can be also considered a conceptual artist, or thinking of Vetements, which is really doing what we've seen in the art world about 10, 15 years ago. But still, it's new because it's coming into the mass somehow, at least attention.
For me, Johann, as you pointed out correctly, I mean, there is a growing connection between art and fashion, and I think that every fashion designer looks at art to get inspired. It's for me one of I'm a big fan of many artists, and I don't like if someone goes and says like, okay, I take that printed on a T-shirt. That's not the connection between fashion and art. I think it's this triggering of an emotion that is interesting for me, that evolves my work. And it's more of the attitude of an artist or of an art piece that inspires me to do something in my field. And of course, for me, fashion in other countries is an art form. You know, in Germany, we are still very commercially minded. It's changing though, but it's very fashion and art. It has a much more natural feel in France, in Italy, also even in England, because culturally it's very different. Here in Germany, we are very much about the functionality of a garment. But this is changing, luckily, and I think that the inspiration that art gives me is so rich.
What I think is interesting, I'm very interested in careers, like careers of artists, how they develop, because we represent early beginning, like, for example, looking at Alicia Quade, who's hanging behind me. I've been advising and consulting and nurturing her career since she was still a student at the academies. And I find that also very interesting looking at MCM, where it originates from. And I remember when I was like doing skateboarding a little bit, that was like the thing. Anyway, I like a lot leaving the own turf, you know, and going into other fields and looking at your own practice from a different perspective. I think that's very motivating. I mean, what makes me smile is the fact, for example, that we are allowed to open while museums aren't. And I find that kind of amusing, because in Germany, we have not such an easy stand as commercial art dealers. You know, we don't get much write-ups in the press. I mean, I do for personality reasons, but not for the exhibitions we mount. And somehow we are replacing the role of the museum now, which I find a little ironical. And yeah, it's funny that here we really think a lot in these categories. You know, it's like also when you, for example, build a house, it has to be either living or working. It's hardly possible to mix it, you know. So and that is the same, I think, with the idea of being an artist. Then you're an artist. You can't be a DJ and an artist, or a fashion designer and an artist and a DJ, or whatever. You know, it's like it's always one category, and that's why I like so much this collaboration we are doing, because it's also breaking a little bit these rules.